Now, mostly what you need to know is that politics has not stopped for the weekend or the holiday, and the latest headlines are amazing. We were like, we should figure out one big headline and do it as a major story with a narrative arc at the top. There's too much going on. We can't narrow it down. I just have to tell you everything, okay? Here's what's going on. ABC's Jonathan Karl reported today that in the Alaska Senate race, the Republican Party is now counting on not the official Republican Party candidate, Joe Miller, but the write-in candidate, Lisa Murkowski. Quote, party leaders have essentially given up on Republican Senate candidate Joe Miller and are now banking on a victory by write-in candidate Lisa Murkowski. It's all because they think Democrat Scott McAdams might win, so they are putting all their eggs in Murkowski's basket to try to keep that seat. The honchos in the Republican Party are vehemently denying ABC's reporting. Check it out.
We are supporting the nominee of our party, which is Mr. Miller, and but our concerns.
Do you think he can win?
Well, I think that polls are very close now between Senator Murkowski and Joe Miller, and what we want to make sure of is that the Democrat doesn't win.
Do you believe that? In other words, do you support your own candidate? Yes, I support our own candidate. Do you think he can win? Can we change the subject? Also, there's this one. Do you remember that ad by that Republican-led group urging Latinos not to vote this year? The head of the group that created that ad, the Don't Vote guy, just voted. Do as I say, Latinos, not as I do. The Don't Vote guy voted early by absentee ballot in Virginia on Wednesday. In Kansas, an alleged case of zombie voting appears itself to be slightly undead. The very, very, very conservative Republican candidate for Secretary of State in Kansas is a guy named Chris Kobach. Chris Kobach has run a campaign based almost entirely around alleging voter fraud. At a press conference last week, Chris Kobach claimed nearly 2,000 dead people are registered to vote in Kansas. Like, he said, for example, a dead man named Alfred Brewer. Problem? Alfred Brewer, not dead. The Wichita Eagle, in fact, tracked him down without having to exhume anything. Quote, reached Thursday at his home where he was raking leaves. Mr. Brewer, age 78, was surprised. Some people thought he was dead. In the great state of California, a ballot initiative that would legalize the recreational use of marijuana is very close right now. Another really controversial ballot measure in California would overturn the state's climate change law. The campaign to defeat that initiative, in other words, to keep the climate change law as is out with a very, very, very clever ad. As you can see, they're going with a World Series theme. See at the top there? Beat Texas. Because the proposition to overturn California's climate change law is funded substantially by Texas oil companies. Nice timing. Also, orange and black. In Colorado, remember that political ad that said, vote for our proposition because President Obama is secretly the angel of death? That proposition not doing very well in the polls. It is an anti-abortion measure that essentially declares that fertilized eggs are people. The proponents of that measure say that they hope it might ban certain forms of birth control. In Oklahoma, there's a great deal of worry about Sharia law replacing the Constitution. A ballot question, I kid you not, forbidding courts in Oklahoma from considering Sharia law is enjoying a healthy lead in the polls right now. Wow. Voters in Washington state are voting on whether to impose a state-level income tax on the wealthy. This, interestingly, in part it is being pushed by Bill Gates's dad. That measure is fairly close in the polls right now. In Missouri, a ballot measure would impose new rules on dog breeders, limiting them to only 50 breeding dogs and requiring minimal standards of care, like making sure the breeding dogs have access to fresh air and they're allowed to rest between litters. The New York Times highlighted this initiative today. It is spearheaded by animal rights groups, which of course has made it a target of one of our old friends. Remember Rick Berman? Remember the guy who says tanning beds are good for you and trans fats are good for you, secondhand smoke is good for you? We've talked on the show before about Rick Berman's latest project, attacking the Humane Society. Mr. Berman appears to be closely following the Prop B fight in Missouri right now as well. Because naturally, in Rick Berman's world, puppy mills are good for puppies. You can tell what the White House is prioritizing in these elections by where the president is campaigning in these final days. Today it was Cleveland, Ohio. Yesterday it was Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Illinois. On the Republican side, who's Michael Steele campaigning for? Michael Steele is campaigning for Michael Steele.
Do you plan to run for chairman of the RNC?
I haven't decided yet.
Do you think you could win again?
Oh, if I run, I'm going to win.
You say that with great confidence.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, my job description is very simple. Raise money, win elections.
In Connecticut this weekend, there was a World Wrestling Entertainment Fan Appreciation Rally, which of course had nothing at all to do with the Connecticut Senate campaign of former WWE CEO Linda McMahon, according to her husband, the WWE's Vince McMahon.
Some people may think that I'm out here to talk about politics today. Nothing could be further from the truth. Although I do encourage you to vote this Tuesday, and while you're voting, feel free to wear a WWE T-shirt.
In fact, you can wear all your favorite wrestling gear to the polls on Tuesday in Connecticut after an initial ruling by the Connecticut Secretary of State against wrestling paraphernalia at polling places. WWE and Vince McMahon sued, and now the anti-wrestling clothing ruling has been blocked. For analysis on this development, we turn now to our sober legal analysis correspondent, Kent Jones. Kent, can you please put this news in context for us?
Sure, Rachel. This is a great victory for free speech. The First Amendment was designed to provide protection for a broad spectrum of expression, and this case clearly falls under its purview.
Thank you. Thank you, Kent. New York voters were treated to a very special mailer from the Republican candidate for governor, Carl Palladino, a campaign mailer disguised as important tax information. You stay classy, Carl. Meanwhile, a third-party candidate in the same race, the same New York governor's race, a candidate who can't really afford to send out giant glossy mailers, is nevertheless sending out giant glossy mailers, attacking Andrew Cuomo, who, of course, is the Democrat in the race. Oddly, the treasurer of the group responsible for these mailers attacking the Democrat happens to be a guy who was paid $17,000 this year to advise Carl Palladino, the Republican in the race. I wonder how that all came together. In Delaware, Republican Christine O'Donnell has announced today that she's launching a 30-minute closing argument TV special that will be airing locally tonight and tomorrow. As for everybody's second favorite fringe candidate in a non-fringe race this year, Sharon Angle, she is still running away from the media. But get this, there are brand new developments tonight in her retreat technique. Used to be that Sharon Angle would just run away with no explanation, right?
What do you mean when you mean Second Amendment remedies?
So, thank you.
Why won't you answer what Second Amendment remedies means? You're not willing to answer what Second Amendment remedies means? We tried to ask you that question earlier. We've actually tried with your campaign for days.
Then, last week, Sharon Angle explained that she was only running away from the press because she wants to be a senator first. She wants to be a senator before she talks to reporters. She does not want to answer questions about why she should or shouldn't be a senator until she is a senator. Okay, cue the running.
I'll answer those questions when I'm the senator.
So you have no answer for them now. Why? We have many Air Force people at Nellis Air Force Base. We have 2 wars that we're prosecuting right now. You haven't talked about how you would prosecute those wars. No answer at all? You are literally staying silent about the 2 wars that we're in right now.
You know, the 2 wars that we're in right now is exactly what we're in.
After that tribute to surrealism, the new line from Sharon Angle's campaign is that she will not answer questions that are posed to her in airports. Because, you know, airport security. Quote, you know, airport security is pretty tight. It's not a really good place to have an interview. No snow globes, no liquids or gels over 3 ounces, and no interviews. Questions for the candidate? I'm sorry, not in the airport. Amazing.